You'll be very shocked and probably surprised to hear that the attack happened through human error.
Welcome to today's Ask the Expert Tech Talk. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Today, we are unpacking the recent Marks & Spencer cyber attack. What happened, how it affects families, and what parents need to know to stay safe online. Joining us today is someone who lives and breathes tech, Stephen Allen, founder and CEO of Linton Technologies. Stephen launched his company straight out of university and over the years has built it into one of the most trusted names in the UK tech space. Stephen, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for that lovely introduction.
You're welcome. So, Stephen, let's start with the basics. Can you briefly explain what happened in the Marks & Spencer cyber attack in non-technical terms for parents who may not be following all the headlines? And also, how serious is this in terms of its risk to families who use the M&S website and app?
In a nutshell, you'll be very shocked and probably surprised to hear that the attack happened through human error. So effectively what happened is one of the hackers phoned the help desk, so the IT help desk of Marks & Spencer's, and said, we need to reset the password for this user. And that help desk operative reset the password. That user happened to have administrative access to the website of M&S, which controls all of the back-end processing. So can see all of the user data, can see all of the products, and can process everything that's going on behind the scenes. So effectively, this person, through human error, got access to that. Now, you might say, surely there are measures in place that just a password doesn't allow somebody access. And that's very true. So what they do in this case, we'll all be familiar with two-factor authentication, which is where you need to use a second device to authenticate yourself when you're logging into your bank or any other critical websites. So in this case, it was a mobile phone. And mobile phone numbers can be spoofed. So this is called SIM spoofing, where they take over somebody's mobile phone. So effectively, everything that goes to that user's mobile phone is intercepted by the hackers. So now they can log in and they can do the two-factor authentication. Once they're in there, every hacker has a different plan as to what they're wanting to try and do. But in this case, it was to try and hold Marks & Spencer's to ransom over the data that's in the back end. So every person that uses the M&S website will have registered their details. So M&S will know their history as to what sort of things they buy. They'll know, in this case, it wasn't a password breach, but of course they have passwords stored, they have addresses, telephone numbers, and lots of personal data about the person. And this can be used. And the biggest area where this is a risk for families is the fact that these people can now build a profile up of you, the users of M&S. So they can phone you up and pretend to be either from M&S, and they've got information to make you feel reassured that they are from M&S because they know something about the things that you've bought recently. They've got your details. But interestingly, and this is the most important thing in all of this, that if they know where you live and they know that you're a typical M&S shopper, they can probably guess some of the other shops or businesses that you might use locally. And they can actually phone you up and pretend to be from them and still have some personal data about you, your address, your phone number, and other things that you might normally buy. So they can easily trick you into giving away more information and actually letting the hackers into something else that's beyond M&S.
Wow, that sounds really big. I mean, now that you've explained it in that way, because, when you see this kind of headlines, you just kind of think this is something affecting the company, but not you as someone who actually uses the M&S website or app quite regularly. At the stage that we are at right now, is it possible then to go into the website or the app and try to delete my information? Or would that work or not work? Or is it too late for that right now?
It would be too late for that right now. So effectively, we don't know exactly what's been taken. M&S have warned their users of the potential data that could have been taken. But it's been taken already. So going in now into the app and changing anything or deleting anything, it's after the horse has bolted, I'm afraid. So this is about knowing what potentially is out there. So M&S have said, as I mentioned earlier, that passwords have not been breached. What's fundamentally important in all of this, and I know everybody does it against the advice, but never use the same password for multiple websites. And this is a prime example of the reason why, because if a website like M&S gets breached and the password data is taken, now they've got your email address, which is your username, and if they get your password, forget about the M&S website now. What they're going to do is, knowing what type of person you are and the sort of businesses you go to, they'll try that on the Waitrose website. They'll put that username and password in. And if you've been using the same password, they're now into your Waitrose account. If they might try it into your bank, they might try it into others. So this is a prime example of the reason why every single website, you should use a different password. And this is to keep that password safe. But one, you're actually trusting that retailer or that business with that password. So you don't want to be in a position where they've breached it and suddenly every other website you use, the password's out there in the ether.
What are some of the implications of, I know you've said in terms of them being able to build your profile, by getting to know your purchase histories and so on. What are some of the other sort of, for example, if I can imagine like how violating it must feel if someone now can possibly know where I live, like my address, and I've got, say, young children and I buy school uniform for them and they probably, figure out somehow where they go to school and so on. What are some of the other threats that I think we should be aware of with regards to this?
Specifically with regards to the M&S breach or just in general?
In general, if something like this ever happens.
In general, you just need to make sure that you're vigilant with these things. In all cases, our information is in the public domain and people can use it. But these cases bring that together and make connections. So whereas I could probably find your name on the internet, I wouldn't necessarily be able to link your address to it very easily without doing some real serious digging. But in these cases, this breach has linked all of that information. So this is, if we think about, for example, people that are susceptible or are not used to the technology. So, for example, an older person may get a call, and if they feel on that call that they're being reassured that the person they're speaking to is legitimate because they've been able to verify things, they can be tricked into doing other things. Now, those things could be money related, or they could be other related. So, for example, there are many threats on the internet. Now, these hackers are not necessarily threats that might be targeting our children. Generally, they're going after our money. But what they're actually doing is they're using our weakest link to get access to that money or those connections that they need to do. So, for example, if somebody is influential in some way, they might be a trusted person. If they can breach that, let's say it's somebody that's a governor of a school or something like that. So if they can target them as a personal person and build up a profile to be able to get them, and they can then compromise that person, they might not be doing that for monetary reasons. They might actually be doing it to access that person's wider network, because this person is now trusted. So if they can breach them and then suddenly send an attack out to everybody they know, as if it's coming from them, the people receiving that attack think, oh, I know that person, I trust them, I'll click on it, it must be legitimate. And that's how the attack grows. So, and the attack could be for kudos for the hacker. Quite often that is the case. If they're people that are just trying to build their profile online as somebody, look what I can do. But more often than not, it's money related. And the money related isn't generally usually going after the individual. Yes, there are cases, of course, where people are trying to get money out of people. But what they want to often do is access their wider network. They can compromise a machine that somebody works on at home, but they also use it for work as well. then they might get access to a wider network and be able to do something. And it's often these things they're just phishing. They're just seeing what they can find. They don't generally target the average person. They target only individuals get targeted if there's an actual bigger prize that somebody can see. Generally, they're phishing to find out what they can find, and if they uncover something that connects them to something else, that's what they're looking to do.
Right, okay. So, besides being very careful with our passwords and not reusing passwords for multiple websites, what else can we do to stay safe online?
If it was a business, I would be recommending high-end firewalls and routers, but generally that's because we're protecting many different avenues. In the home, they are equally as important, but all you've got to do generally in these cases is make sure they're updated. So much like you update and patch your computer, the router that connects you to the internet also needs to have updates run on it. And most people don't run them for many, many years and don't even realize that there are updates sitting there waiting to be done.
Right.
Equally, people receive that router from their internet provider and never change the default password. And I've seen instances where the BT or Virgin, whoever it might be, put the connection on the outside wall of the house, and the person stands the router on the windowsill of the house. So what can happen? Somebody just looks through the window and reads the label on the back of the router, which has got the Wi-Fi password, and then they're straight into that person's network.
Great. Okay, so that's really good information. So change the password, your default passwords on your router, and then keep them updated. If you get them from, say, BT or Virgin, do they normally run these updates automatically for you, or is this something that, parents, probably families, need to do it by themselves?
No, the updates are generally not run for you. These are things that you would need to do. So in a business setting, we would always have a managed service that sits on top of it to make sure we're doing it for those clients. But in a residential setting, you need to log into that router yourself. And when you go in there, you will see a section. Quite often, you'll log in and it'll look very, very basic because they'll have a basic interface to make it simple for you to configure things, but then there might be an advanced settings button which turns it into a different view which has a lot more functionality, and that's where you'll probably see the update the router or download firmware updates.
Right. Thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of non-tech families would find this information pretty really good. Finally, in terms of protecting children online in general, do you think parental control apps are super effective in terms of, as a parent, when you're looking for a parental control app, what are some of the things that, we should be looking at? What are some key features you think we should think about as a parent if you're looking to protect our children's data and information online?
This generally depends on the age of the children, and what you'll tend to find is, I know even through the generations, children are always one step ahead of their parents on tech as well as they get older. But generally, if we look at technology, or specifically computers, and think of it as a tool, there's no other area of the world where we would give the same tool to a toddler that we would give to an adult. If you compare it to a knife or a hammer or a screwdriver, you wouldn't give those to a toddler, you'd only give them to adults. But in this case, we're giving exactly the same tool to our children that adults and predators are using. So what we need to make sure is that as parents, if it was me, I probably wouldn't want to put them anywhere near those tools. But ultimately, if you do that, they're at a disadvantage. So you need to find a balance. And that balance is often about ring fencing what they can do on the tool, what they can access, and what they need permission to do. Now, as a very young child, you want a piece of software that lives on there, either on the machine or on the network. So there are devices that you can put in front of the router. Think of it like a firewall. So the router is the connection to the internet, and it has a little basic firewall built in, but you can actually put another physical device behind it. So it's between the router and the computer, and that does all of the work. And that stops the children's friends coming around and connecting and suddenly not having the same parental controls that you would enforce on the child if you'd installed it only on the machine. But generally, you want to restrict at a very young age everything and make sure everything is going through some sort of a validation as to these are sites I've given you permission to use. But as they get older, what you'll find is they'll start using gaming consoles and want to be able to do things that require greater throughput of the bandwidth for the internet. And these parental controls suddenly start holding the child back and stopping them from being able to do that. And the child then starts to pester to switch it off, I can't have this, my friends don't have this. And generally what parents do is they relax those controls as they feel that that child is able to make some decisions for themselves. But ultimately, you probably wouldn't allow that child to make those decisions in a real world if you understood fully the threats that they could be posed with by doing that. So I think it's a parent by parent basis, but there are tools out there. We've helped some of our clients where they've wanted to put technology into the home for their children, and they've used the Disney firewall, which is a device that you can get that goes in front of the router. Or there is software from Microsoft Family that you can install actually on the machines themselves to do restrictions. But as I say, as soon as a friend comes over with a laptop, that suddenly doesn't have your parental controls on it anymore. So your child can suddenly be looking over the shoulder of their friend and saying, oh, what can you access that I can't? So be very careful about other people bringing technology to your house that your child has access to.
Great. Thank you so much for that amazing tip. So just to sum up everything that we've learned today from the attack and how to protect ourselves online, keep your passwords different for all the websites that you use and build a good habit in terms of that. Update your passwords on your router as well and have protection not just on the machine. Am I right? Is that what you were saying? Like, you need to, protect have some sort of, software tools in your router that you can use to then, not allow the people to access your Wi-Fi. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I don't think I've said
generally.
Yeah.
What we're talking about here is what we would call a firewall. So it's a physical device that sits between the router and any computers connected to the network. So Disney do a device like this that you can plug in, and it controls all the access from every device on your network, and you specify machines that you want to be exempt from it. So if parents are working from home and their machines are also connected to the network, you can exempt certain machines. And you can also restrict the times that children can use the internet as well. So it can fully restrict. So you can do things like, you haven't done your homework yet, the internet doesn't come on until you've done your homework. And at the press of a button, you can turn on the internet for their devices. But as the parents, you can still be using your devices. So you're literally just turning off the children's devices. What this is helping you to do is get around the clever children that are one step ahead of the parents and know how to bypass software on the machines and know how to go via different routes to get to the internet. If there's an actual physical blocker, it stops all of that.
Great, that is amazing. And where do you think parents can get more information to learn about that, Stephen? Do you have something that you can share, or something that you do to help families with this?
I probably could share. I don't have the exact websites to go to at hand at the moment, but a simple search for the Disney firewall or Microsoft Family would bring up some good results.
Thank you for that. That's all for today, Tech Talk. Thank you so much for joining us today, Stephen. There's a lot that we have learned today. So thank you for that.